I'm Berta 29, and my world turned upside down when my nightmare mother-in-law Evelyn suddenly handed over custody of my stepchildren. After 7 years of her constant criticism and undermining, this unexpected change left me suspicious. Why would a woman who'd made it clear I wasn't good enough to raise her precious grandchildren suddenly trust me completely? The answer came when I discovered a hidden letter in her purse that revealed a devastating truth none of us were prepared for. If you're watching this story right now, I'd love to know where you're from. Drop your location in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe to join our storytelling family. Trust me, what I discovered in that letter changed everything about our complicated family forever. Looking back, my life before Daniel feels like it belonged to someone else entirely. I grew up in a small town in Minnesota, raised by loving parents who taught me the value of hard work and perseverance. But when I was 19, they were killed in a car accident on an icy highway, leaving me alone to navigate the world. With no siblings and distant relatives who were more strangers than family, I threw myself into my education, working multiple jobs to put myself through college for an accounting degree. By 22, I was working for a catering company to make ends meet while finishing my degree. That's where I met Daniel. His company was hosting a corporate gala, and I was serving champagne, trying not to spill anything on my already stained uniform. Daniel was 44, handsome, successful, and completely out of my league with his tailored suit and confident smile. When he asked for my number at the end of the night, I was sure it was a joke. "I just want to talk to you," he insisted. "There's something about you that feels real." After years of struggling on my own, there was something irresistible about Daniel's stability and warmth. Our 12-year age gap raised eyebrows, but I didn't care. He made me feel safe in a way I hadn't since losing my parents. On our third date, Daniel told me about Laura, his wife who had died of breast cancer 3 years earlier. He spoke about her with such love that I could never feel threatened by her memory. What did terrify me was learning about his children, Mia, who was 5 then, and Jake, who was just 2 when their mother died. "They're my world," Daniel said, showing me pictures on his phone. "Mia looks just like her mother." I remember staring at those smiling faces and feeling completely inadequate. What did I know about being a mother? I was barely an adult myself. But Daniel was patient, arranging casual meetings at parks and ice cream shops before I ever set foot in their home. Mia was suspicious from the start. A solemn child with her mother's dark curls and penetrating eyes, she evaluated my every move. My mommy used to make my pancakes in the shape of hearts. She informed me the first morning I stayed over watching as I clumsily flipped misshapen circles on Daniel's fancy griddle. "I'm sorry, sweetie. I'm not very good at fancy pancakes yet, but I can try heart shapes next time, I offered. She just shrugged and picked at her food. Jake was easier. At 2, he was still young enough to accept affection from anyone who offered it. His chubby hands would reach for me without hesitation, and his delighted giggles when I played peekaboo were like balm to my nervous heart. 6 months into our relationship, Daniel proposed. We married in a small ceremony with just the children and a few close friends. I wore a simple white dress from a department store, and Daniel looked at me like I was the most beautiful woman in the world. Mia was our reluctant flower girl, and Jake toddled down the aisle with the rings tied securely to a pillow. I thought the hardest part would be winning over the children. I was wrong. The real challenge walked into our lives 1 week after the honeymoon, wearing an expensive cashmere sweater and carrying homemade cookies for the children. Evelyn Matthews was not what I expected. Based on Daniel's descriptions of his mother, I had imagined a warm, doting grandmother. Instead, I met a steely-eyed woman in her 60s who evaluated me like I was a suspicious stain on her pristine carpet. "So this is the new wife," she said, not quite looking at me. "Daniel always did rush into things." Daniel laughed uncomfortably. "Mom be nice. Berta's wonderful with the kids. I'm sure she does her best," Evelyn replied, already moving past me to scoop up Jake. "Hello, my precious boy. Grandma brought your favorite cookies." That first meeting set the tone for our relationship. Nothing I did was ever quite right in Evelyn's eyes. My cooking was too bland or too spicy. The children's clothes weren't appropriate for the weather or the occasion. The house wasn't clean enough, or I was cleaning with the wrong products. "Laura always used organic cleaning supplies around the children," she would comment, opening my cabinets without permission. Their little lungs are still developing, you know. When I found Mia in tears after spilling juice on her dress before school, I learned that Evelyn had told her, "Mommy would never have let you wear that dress to school anyway. It's not appropriate." I tried talking to Daniel about his mother's behavior, but he would sigh and run his hands through his hair, a gesture I would come to recognize as his way of avoiding conflict. "Mom's just protective of the kids," he'd say. "She and Laura were really close. Give her time." Time didn't help. If anything, Evelyn became more determined to find fault with me as the years passed. When I was promoted at work, she questioned whether I was spending enough time with the children. When I cut back my hours to be home more, she wondered aloud if I was becoming too financially dependent on her son. Despite Evelyn's interference, I slowly built relationships with the children. Jake was my eager helper in the kitchen by age 4, standing on a stool to stir batter or sprinkle cheese on casseroles. Mia was harder to reach, but we found common ground in books. I'd been an avid reader since childhood, and discovering that Mia shared this passion gave us something to connect over. By the time she was 9, we had a standing date every other Saturday to visit the local bookstore. These small victories felt enormous in the face of Evelyn's constant undermining. But just as I thought we were finding our rhythm as a family, Daniel was promoted to regional manager. The new position came with a significant salary increase, but also required frequent travel. Suddenly, I was managing the household and children largely on my own, with Evelyn swooping in to help whenever she sensed an opportunity. "The children need stability," she would remind me while rearranging my carefully planned schedule. "I've cleared my calendar to take them this weekend while Daniel's away. You could use the break, I'm sure." Her help always came with strings attached. The children would return home using phrases I'd never heard from them before questioning routines we'd established together. "Grandma says we should be in bed by 8, not 8:30, Jake informed me one evening. "Grandma says my math grades would improve if I had proper tutoring," Mia added another time, though her grades were already excellent. By our 7th anniversary, I had settled into an uneasy coexistence with Evelyn. I had learned which battles to fight and which to concede. The children, now 12 and 9, had found their own ways to navigate between us. Daniel remained largely oblivious, content that his family was functioning without major crises during his absences. Then came the Sunday dinner that changed everything. Sunday dinners at Evelyn's sprawling colonial home were an institution. No matter how busy our weeks were, no matter what conflicts simmered beneath the surface, we gathered around her formal dining table at precisely 5 o'clock every Sunday. The children dressed in their nice clothes. Daniel wore a button-down shirt, and I spent far too much time agonizing over my own outfit, knowing Evelyn would find some flaw regardless. This particular Sunday in October seemed no different at first. Evelyn greeted the children with her usual enthusiasm, Daniel with warm affection, and me with polite distance. But something felt off. The house, normally immaculate, had a slightly neglected air. A pile of mail sat unopened on the entryway table. The flowers in the centerpiece were wilting at the edges. Most strange of all was Evelyn herself. Her trademark critical comments were absent as we settled into the living room before dinner. Instead of pointing out that Mia's hair needed trimming or questioning why Jake's shoelaces were mismatched, she simply listened as the children chattered about school. "Grandma, can I show you my science project photos?" Mia asked, pulling out her phone. "Of course, darling," Evelyn replied, patting the sofa beside her. I caught Daniel's eye, raising an eyebrow in silent question. He shrugged slightly, seemingly as confused by his mother's unusually pleasant demeanor as I was. Dinner was Evelyn's standard fare. Roast beef, potatoes, and vegetables so perfectly cooked they seemed artificial. But I noticed she barely touched her own plate, pushing food around rather than eating. "Mom, the roast is amazing as always," Daniel commented, helping himself to seconds. "Thank you, dear. I'm glad you're enjoying it." Her smile seemed strained. "I was thinking the children might like to spend next weekend here with me. The fall festival will be happening in town." The children immediately perked up. Evelyn's weekends were coveted. She spoiled them shamelessly with activities, treats, and significantly fewer rules than our household. "Can we, Dad, please?" Jake bounced in his seat. "That would be great," Daniel agreed easily. "Berta and I could use a weekend to ourselves." I nodded, though something about Evelyn's offer nagged at me. She typically planned these weekends weeks in advance, sending itineraries and packing lists. This spontaneous invitation was out of character. As dessert concluded, homemade apple pie that the children devoured while I politely declined, knowing Evelyn would interpret any enjoyment as criticism of my own baking skills. Our hostess cleared her throat. Daniel, Berta, could I speak with you privately for a moment? Children, why don't you go watch that show Grandma recorded for you in the den? Once the children had scampered off, Evelyn led us to her formal sitting room, a space rarely used except for serious conversations. My stomach tightened with apprehension as we settled into the stiff antique furniture. I've been doing some thinking, Evelyn began, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. About the children, about their future. Daniel leaned forward. What about their future, Mom? Evelyn smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her slacks. I believe it would be best if the children lived with you full time now. No more weekends with me, no more summer vacations at my home. The silence that followed was deafening. In 7 years, Evelyn had never voluntarily reduced her time with the children. If anything, she had consistently pushed for more influence in their lives. Mom, what are you talking about? Daniel finally managed. The kids love staying with you. And I love having them, she replied, not quite meeting his eyes. But I need to focus on myself right now. Some personal projects I've been putting off. I studied her face, noting the unusual pallor beneath her perfect makeup, the slight tremor in her hands that she tried to hide by clasping them tightly in her lap. Is everything okay, Evelyn? I asked cautiously. Her gaze flicked to me, then away. Perfectly fine. I'm just at an age where I should prioritize my own needs. Daniel, ever the devoted son, immediately accepted her explanation. If that's what you want, Mom, of course we're happy to have the kids full time. Right, Berta. Both of them turned to me, waiting for my response. Of course I loved the children and wanted them with us. But after years of Evelyn's micromanagement and criticism of my parenting, this sudden vote of confidence felt deeply suspicious. I'm happy to have the children with us, I said carefully. But this seems very sudden. Are you sure there isn't more to this decision? Evelyn's smile tightened. Always the suspicious one, aren't you, Berta? Not everything has a hidden agenda. Sometimes a decision is just a decision. Before I could press further, she stood up. Now let's not keep the children waiting. I'll talk to them about the new arrangement. The drive home that evening was tense. The children sat silently in the back seat processing Evelyn's announcement. Mia had reacted with teenage skepticism, demanding to know the real reason her grandmother was abandoning them. Jake had simply asked if he could still call Evelyn whenever he wanted. I don't understand why Mom would do this, Daniel murmured as we navigated the dark suburban streets. She lives for those kids. Exactly, I replied, which is why this makes no sense. Did she say anything to you privately that might explain it? He shook his head. Nothing. And I know my mother. She doesn't just change her mind about important things without a reason. Should we be worried about her? I asked, genuine concern mixing with my suspicion. Daniel sighed. You know, Mom. If something was wrong, she'd hide it until the last possible moment. Pride is her middle name. That night I lay awake long after Daniel's breathing had deepened into sleep. My mind raced with possibilities, none of them comforting. Was Evelyn ill? Had something happened that made her feel unable to care for the children? Or was this some elaborate test, another way to prove I wasn't the mother these children deserved? The next morning brought the immediate challenges of our new reality. Mia slouched at the breakfast table, pointedly ignoring my attempts at conversation. Jake peppered me with questions about whether his after-school routine would change. Will you pick me up from soccer now instead of Grandma? She always brings cookies. Yes, I'll pick you up, I assured him. And I can bring cookies too. He considered this with the serious deliberation of a 9-year-old. Chocolate chip with the soft middles. Absolutely. Soft middles guaranteed. As I dropped the children at school and headed to my office, I made a mental list of all the adjustments needed for our new arrangement. Evelyn had handled so many aspects of the children's lives that I'd never had to think about. Dentist appointments, extracurricular schedules, school functions. Now these would all fall to me, especially with Daniel's travel schedule. The sudden weight of full-time parenting felt both daunting and strangely exhilarating. Despite Evelyn's constant implication that I was inadequate, I had always wanted a closer relationship with the children. Maybe this was our chance to truly become a family without her shadow looming over every interaction. But as I settled at my desk, the nagging sense that something wasn't right continued to gnaw at me. People like Evelyn didn't simply step aside without reason. Whatever was happening, I was determined to uncover the truth, for the children's sake, and perhaps for my own peace of mind. The first week of our new arrangement was a crash course in the logistics of full-time parenting. I requested a flexible work schedule, grateful that my position as office manager allowed me to adjust my hours around school drop-offs and pickups. My boss, a mother of three herself, was surprisingly accommodating. "Family comes first," she said when I explained the situation. "We can make this work." If only everything else had been that simple. Mornings became a carefully orchestrated ballet of alarm clocks, breakfast preparations, and last-minute homework reviews. Mia required 20 minutes in the bathroom, Jake needed reminders to brush his teeth, and someone inevitably couldn't find a shoe or textbook just as we needed to leave. "Grandma always has my stuff ready the night before," Jake pointed out on day 3 when we were scrambling to locate his math workbook. "That's a good system," I acknowledged, making a mental note to implement evening preparations. "We'll start doing that too." Mia was less direct in her comparisons, but made her feelings clear through sighs and eye-rolling whenever I deviated from Evelyn's established routines. When I served spaghetti for dinner, something I thought was a safe, kid-friendly choice, she picked at it suspiciously. "Grandma's sauce doesn't have chunks," she informed me, nudging a piece of onion with her fork. "I can make it without chunks next time," I offered. She shrugged. "Whatever, I'm not really hungry anyway." These small rejections stung, but I reminded myself that the children were adjusting to a significant change. Their relationship with Evelyn had been a constant in their lives, especially after losing their mother. Her sudden withdrawal, however well-intentioned my takeover might be, represented another disruption. While Jake began to warm up after a few days, my chocolate chip cookies apparently passing muster, Mia remained distant. She spent hours in her room with the door closed, emerging only for meals and school. When I knocked to check on her, the responses were minimal. "I'm fine. Just doing homework. Not hungry." Daniel, meanwhile, left for a 3-day business trip on the second day of our new arrangement, promising to make it up to everyone when he returned. His absence meant facing the children's adjustment period alone, without even the buffer of his presence at dinner. I tried calling Evelyn several times during that first week, hoping for insight into managing the children's routines, or perhaps a clearer explanation of her decision. Each call went to voicemail. My text messages received brief, non-committal responses. "Kids have swimming on Wednesdays at 4:30. Don't forget towels." "Mia needs to finish science project by Friday." "Jake likes crusts cut off sandwiches." Practical information, but nothing addressing the elephant in the room. When I directly asked if everything was okay, the response was a terse, "Everything's fine, just busy." By Friday, I was exhausted, but oddly satisfied. We had made it through the week with no major disasters. Jake had even asked me to help with his diorama of the solar system, choosing me over FaceTiming his grandmother for assistance. As we painted tiny planets together at the kitchen table, I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. "Is Neptune your favorite planet?" I asked, watching him carefully apply blue paint to the small styrofoam ball. "Yeah, I like that it has storms that last for years and years. That's pretty cool." "It is cool. I like Saturn with all those amazing rings." He looked up at me thoughtfully. "Dad says my mom, my first mom, used to know all the planets and stars. She could point them out at night." My heart squeezed. "Your mom sounds like she was very smart." "Yeah." He returned to his painting. "Do you know stars too?" "Some of them. Maybe we could look at them together sometime. I'm not an expert like your mom was, but we could learn more together." He nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. "That would be good." That night, after the children were in bed, I sat on the patio with a glass of wine, mentally reviewing the week. Despite the challenges, there had been moments of connection I might have missed if Evelyn had remained in charge of the children's free time. I felt cautiously optimistic about building stronger relationships with both kids given time and patience. Yet Evelyn's absence nagged at me. Our neighbor Carol had stopped by that afternoon to drop off a PTA form, mentioning casually that she'd seen Evelyn at church the previous Sunday. "She didn't look well," Carol commented. "Lost weight. Is she okay?" "As far as I know," I'd replied, my concern reigniting. "She's just taking some time for herself." Carol's eyebrows had risen slightly. That doesn't sound like Evelyn. That woman has never taken time for herself in all the years I've known her. As I sipped my wine under the stars, I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was being hidden from all of us. Myself, the children, and perhaps even Daniel. Whatever Evelyn's reason for stepping back, I was increasingly certain it wasn't simply a desire for me time. The weekend brought Daniel home and a temporary return to our previous dynamic. He took the children for pizza and a movie, giving me a much-needed break and them a sense of normalcy. When I shared my concerns about Evelyn, he listened but remained non-committal. "Mom's always been private about personal matters," he said. "If she says she needs space, we should respect that. But what if she's in some kind of trouble or sick?" He shook his head. "Mom doesn't get sick. She hasn't even had a cold in the 10 years since Dad died. She's probably just finally realizing she needs a life beyond the grandchildren." I wasn't convinced, but I let the matter drop. Daniel had always been somewhat blind to his mother's manipulations. He was unlikely to see problems she was actively hiding. Monday morning brought the start of our second week as full-time parents. As I packed lunches and checked backpacks, I found myself falling into a rhythm that felt increasingly natural. Jake hugged me before running to the bus, a small gesture that filled me with disproportionate joy. Even Mia managed to thanks when I handed her the permission slip I'd signed for an upcoming field trip. Small victories, perhaps, but they felt monumental after years of being the family outsider. Whatever Evelyn's reasons for giving us this opportunity, I was determined to make the most of it, for the children's sake and for my own. A month passed with minimal contact from Evelyn. Her absence, once the subject of daily complaints from the children, gradually became less noticeable as we established new routines. Jake thrived under the consistency blossoming when he realized I would be at every soccer game, not just the ones that fit into Evelyn's schedule. Mia remained more reserved, but had begun to seek me out for help with English essays, acknowledging my way with words that even Evelyn had reluctantly praised in the past. The children still asked about their grandmother, but with decreasing frequency. Daniel spoke with her briefly each week, reporting that she was fine, just busy with her charity work, an explanation that grew less convincing with each passing day. Then came the first tangible clue that something wasn't right. While sorting mail one evening, I noticed an envelope from Riverside Medical Center among Daniel's stack. The return address caught my eye because it was from the oncology department billing office. Daniel quickly tucked it into his briefcase when he saw me looking, changing the subject with unusual abruptness. That same week, Mia mentioned that Evelyn had canceled their traditional grandmother-granddaughter holiday shopping trip. "We always go the first weekend of November to beat the crowds," she explained, trying to sound nonchalant, though I could hear the hurt in her voice. "She said maybe next year instead." When my concerns mounting, I decided to drive by Evelyn's house one afternoon while the children were at school. I told myself it was just to check if she needed anything, but in truth, I was investigating. The pristine lawn that Evelyn meticulously maintained showed signs of neglect, leaves unraked, flower beds untended. More alarmingly, a medical transport vehicle was parked in the driveway. I sat in my car debating whether to approach the house when the front door opened. A woman in scrubs emerged, helped Evelyn down the front steps, and assisted her into the vehicle. Even from a distance, I could see that my mother-in-law had lost significant weight. Her clothes, always tailored to perfection, hung loosely on her frame. That evening, I called Evelyn, directly determined to get answers. After several rings, an unfamiliar voice answered. "Matthew's residence?" "Hello, I'm calling for Evelyn. This is her daughter-in-law, Berta." There was a pause. "Mrs. Matthews is resting right now. May I take a message?" "Who am I speaking with?" I asked, thrown by this unexpected gatekeeper. "I'm Denise, Mrs. Matthews' home health aide. She's not receiving visitors at the moment, but I can let her know you called." Home health aide. My concern deepened. "It's important that I speak with her. It's about the children." Another pause, then muffled voices as the phone was apparently covered. Finally, Evelyn came on the line, her voice weaker than I remembered. "Berta, is something wrong with the children?" "The children are fine," I assured her. "But they miss you. We all do." "Evelyn, what's going on? I saw the medical transport today." Her tone immediately sharpened. "You were spying on me." "No," I was concerned. "We haven't seen you in weeks. You've canceled plans with the children, and now there's a home health aide answering your phone. Are you ill?" "My health is my business." she replied coldly. I'm simply taking some preventative measures at my doctor's recommendation. Nothing for anyone to worry about. The deflection was so typical of Evelyn that I might have believed her if not for the fatigue evident in her voice and what I'd witnessed earlier. The children would love to see you. I tried again. Maybe we could bring dinner over this weekend. That's not necessary. I'm quite busy with appointments and such. Give the children my love. Before I could press further, she ended the call. I sat holding the silent phone, more convinced than ever that something serious was being hidden from us. The next day, I made an executive decision. Without consulting Daniel, who continued to accept his mother's evasions, I picked the children up from school and drove directly to Evelyn's house. Where are we going? Mia asked as I turned onto the familiar street. To see your grandmother. I think she might need some company. Jake bounced excitedly in his seat. Can we stay for dinner? Grandma makes the best chicken pot pie. We'll see, I hedged, unsure what condition we would find Evelyn in. The house looked different in daylight, still neglected around the edges, but not as ominous as it had seemed the previous afternoon. I ushered the children up the front walk, noting that the seasonal wreath Evelyn usually displayed was absent from the door. Mia rang the bell, practically vibrating with excitement, despite her attempts to appear cool and unbothered. After a long moment, the door opened to reveal Denise, the home health aide, looking startled. Oh, Mrs. Matthews isn't expecting visitors. Before I could respond, the children pushed past her into the foyer, calling for their grandmother. I gave Denise an apologetic look. I'm sorry for not calling ahead, but the children really miss their grandmother. We won't stay long. Denise looked uncomfortable, but stepped aside to let me enter. She's in the sunroom. But please, she tires easily these days. The children had already found their way to Evelyn, and I heard their excited voices before I entered the sunroom. What I saw there stopped me in my tracks. Evelyn sat in a recliner wrapped in a light blanket despite the room's warmth. She wore a silk headscarf where her perfectly coiffed hair had once been, and her face was gaunt, the cheekbones too prominent under her skin. But most shocking was her expression as she gazed at her grandchildren, a mixture of joy and profound sadness that made my chest ache. Grandma, why do you have a scarf on? Are you cold? Jake was asking, perched on the ottoman near her feet. Evelyn's eyes met mine over the children's heads, a flash of anger quickly replaced by resignation. I'm having some treatments that make my hair fall out temporarily, she explained to Jake, her voice gentle. The scarf is prettier than being bald, don't you think? Mia, more perceptive at 12, went very still. What kind of treatments? Are you sick? I'm working with my doctors on some health issues, Evelyn replied carefully. Nothing for you to worry about. You should have told us, Mia said, her voice rising. We would have come to see you. We would have helped. Evelyn reached for her granddaughter's hand. That's exactly why I didn't tell you, darling. I didn't want you to worry or feel responsible for helping me. Jake, less aware of the implications, was already moving on. Can we still have sleepovers here? I miss your pancakes. Evelyn's composure cracked slightly. Not right now, sweetheart. Grandma needs her rest. But soon, I hope. I stepped forward, finally addressing the elephant in the room. Evelyn, what's going on? What kind of treatments are you having? Her eyes flashed with the familiar annoyance I'd grown accustomed to over the years. This is hardly the time or place for that discussion, Berta. Before I could respond, Evelyn suddenly paled, placing a hand to her forehead. I'm feeling rather tired. Denise, could you bring my medication? The aide appeared quickly, helping Evelyn swallow several pills with water. Mia watched with wide, frightened eyes. Are those to make you better? She asked in a small voice. They help manage some symptoms, Evelyn replied vaguely. Mia, would you be a dear and read to me from that book on the side table? It's been too quiet around here without your lovely voice. While Mia began to read clearly, conflicted, but wanting to please her grandmother, Jake tugged at my sleeve. I need to use the bathroom, he whispered. You know where it is, right? I asked, not wanting to leave the room just yet. He nodded and scampered off. A few minutes later, he returned something clutched in his hand. Grandma, I found these in your bathroom, he announced, holding out several prescription bottles. Are these your medicines? There's lots of them. Evelyn's face tightened with dismay as I gently took the bottles from Jake. The labels confirm my worst suspicions. Medications I recognize from my research after my own parents' illnesses, pain management, anti-nausea drugs medications to boost white blood cell counts, cancer treatments. Jake, Mia, could you give your grandmother and me a moment alone? I asked, my voice carefully controlled. Maybe see if Denise has any cookies in the kitchen. The children reluctantly left Mia, casting worried glances over her shoulder. When they were gone, I placed the medication bottles on the side table. Cancer? I asked simply. Evelyn sighed, the fight seeming to drain out of her. Pancreatic stage 4, diagnosed 3 months ago. The blunt confirmation hit me like a physical blow. 3 months, and you didn't tell anyone, not even Daniel. Daniel knows, she said quietly. He's known since the diagnosis. I stared at her, processing this information. He knows, but he hasn't said anything to me or the children. At my request, Evelyn clarified, I didn't want the children to see me like this, to remember me like this, and I didn't want to burden you with my care while also managing the household and children. So that's why you suddenly gave us full custody, I realized aloud. Not because you trust me with them, but because you're too sick to maintain your regular schedule. A flicker of the old Evelyn surfaced. Do you always have to assume the worst of me, Berta? Yes, my illness is part of the reason, but I wouldn't have entrusted the children to you if I didn't believe you could care for them properly. Before I could respond, Denise returned to the room. Mrs. Matthews, Dr. Reynolds is on his way for your home checkup. I think your visitors should probably leave now so you can rest before he arrives. Evelyn nodded tiredly. Please tell the children goodbye for me. And Berta... She hesitated. Daniel should have told you. That's between you and him. But please don't tell the children how serious this is. Not yet. I gathered the children, who were reluctant to leave so soon. Mia especially seemed to have picked up on the gravity of the situation. Is Grandma going to be okay? She asked as we drove home, her voice small. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Grandma is working with her doctors to get better, but it might take some time and she might not feel well during the treatments. Is that why she gave us to you? Jake asked from the back seat. Because she's sick. She didn't give you to me, I corrected gently. We're family. I've always wanted to spend time with you both. Grandma just needs to focus on her health right now. The rest of the drive passed in silence, each of us processing what we'd seen. My mind was racing with questions for Daniel. How could he have kept something so significant from me, from his children? What else wasn't he telling us? As we pulled into our driveway, I made a decision. The children deserved honesty, even if it was difficult. And I deserved answers from my husband about why he had left me in the dark, while I struggled to understand our suddenly altered family dynamic. How about pizza for dinner? I suggested, wanting to give the children something normal to look forward to after the emotional afternoon. Can we get stuffed crust? Jake asked, momentarily distracted from his worries. Absolutely, with extra cheese. As the children headed inside to wash up, I pulled out my phone and sent Daniel a text. We need to talk when you get home. I know about your mother. His response came almost immediately. I'm sorry, I'll explain everything tonight. I stared at those words, a complex mixture of emotions churning inside me. Anger at being kept in the dark. Worry for Evelyn despite our difficult relationship. Concern for how this would affect the children. And beneath it all, a deep sadness for the painful journey that lay ahead for our family. Daniel arrived home earlier than usual that evening, his face drawn with the knowledge that difficult conversations awaited. The children were already in bed after an evening of pizza, ice cream, and mindless cartoon movies, comforts I'd offered to distract them from their concerns about Evelyn. We sat at the kitchen table, steam rising from mugs of tea neither of us would drink. The silence stretched between us until I finally broke it. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. That's what your mother told me today. Daniel nodded, eyes fixed on his mug. Yes, 3 months ago. And you've known all this time. Another nod. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, fighting to keep my voice level. You've watched me struggle to understand why she suddenly stepped back, watched me try to adjust to full-time parenting without warning, and never once thought to mention, "Oh, by the way, my mother is dying of cancer." He flinched at the word dying, but didn't dispute it. Mom made me promise not to tell anyone. She didn't want pity or to be treated differently. "I'm not anyone, Daniel. I'm your wife, the person who's been raising your children with you for 7 years." My voice cracked slightly. The person who deserved to know why our entire family dynamic suddenly changed. "I know," he admitted, finally meeting my eyes. "I was wrong not to tell you. But Mom was so adamant, and with her prognosis." He trailed off. "What is her prognosis?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. 6 months, maybe less. The cancer was already advanced when they found it. She opted for some palliative treatments, but declined aggressive intervention. The timeline struck me like a physical blow. 6 months from diagnosis, so she has 3 months left. Approximately. It could be longer if the treatments help, but the doctors aren't optimistic. I sat back in my chair processing this information. And the children? Were you ever going to tell them, or just let their grandmother disappear from their lives without explanation? Daniel ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration I knew well. Mom wanted to spare them as long as possible. She doesn't want them to see her deteriorate like Laura did. The mention of his first wife's cancer battle hung heavy between us. The children had been younger then, but they still carried the scars of watching their mother slowly slip away. "They already know something's wrong," I told him. "They saw her today. Thin, wearing a headscarf, taking multiple medications. Mia especially is putting the pieces together." "You took them to see her." Daniel's voice rose in surprise. "Mom specifically asked that they not visit." "Because I didn't know she was sick," I countered, my own voice rising. "I thought she was being typically controlling and distant. I was trying to maintain their relationship with their grandmother." We stared at each other across the table, the weight of misunderstanding and withheld truths pressing down on both of us. "I'm sorry," Daniel finally said, deflating. "I should have told you. I was trying to honor Mom's wishes while also protecting the kids. And honestly, I didn't know how to talk about it. Losing Mom so soon after Laura." His voice broke. My anger softened slightly at the grief evident in his face. Daniel had already lost so much. His father to a heart attack in his 50s, his first wife to breast cancer, and now his mother to another aggressive cancer. Behind his stoic exterior, he must be breaking apart. "I understand wanting to protect the children," I said more gently. "But they deserve to know what's happening in an age-appropriate way. They need time to process to say goodbye properly. And frankly, so do I." He looked up surprised. "You and Mom have never exactly been close." "No," I agreed. "But she's still family. She's still important to you and the children. And no one should face cancer alone, no matter how difficult our relationship has been." Daniel reached across the table and took my hand. "How do we tell the kids?" "Together," I said firmly. "Tomorrow morning. We'll sit them down and explain that Grandma is very sick, that the doctors are doing everything they can, but that she needs our support and understanding right now. And that she might not get better," Daniel added quietly. "Yes, they need to be prepared for that possibility, especially given what they went through with Laura." We spent the next hour planning what to say, how to answer the inevitable questions, and how to support the children through another devastating loss. As we finally headed to bed exhausted but united in purpose, Daniel paused in the hallway. "There's something else you should know," he said hesitantly. "Mom's primary reason for giving us full custody wasn't just because she's sick. She wanted to see if you could handle it. If you were committed enough to the children to take on full responsibility." I stared at him speechless. "She's always worried that you married me, but not the children," he continued. "That if something happened to me, you might not want to raise them." The implication stung, but it wasn't entirely surprising given Evelyn's consistent undermining of my relationship with the children. "And what do you think?" I asked, suddenly needing to know. "I think you've proven yourself 1,000 times over," he replied without hesitation. "These past weeks especially. You've stepped up in ways I couldn't have imagined, all without knowing the full situation." I nodded, tears threatening. Thank you for saying that. But Daniel, the fact that you even needed proof hurts more than I can say. He had the grace to look ashamed. I know. I've never doubted your love for the children. Mom's fears were never mine. As I lay in bed that night, sleep eluded me. The revelation about Evelyn's cancer explained so much about the past months. Her weight loss, her uncharacteristic withdrawal, her sudden delegation of grandmotherly duties. But it also raised new questions. If Evelyn had only 3 months left, what would that mean for our family? How would the children cope with losing another maternal figure? And beneath these immediate concerns lurked a more personal question. What would it mean for me to lose Evelyn before we'd ever resolve the tension between us? For all our differences, she was the keeper of Laura's memory for the children, the connection to their early years that I had never been part of. When she was gone, that living link would be severed. The thought filled me with an unexpected sadness that kept me awake long into the night. The next morning, we gathered the children in the living room before school. They seemed to sense the seriousness of the moment sitting close together on the couch, eyes moving anxiously between Daniel and me. "Is this about Grandma?" Mia asked immediately. "Is she dying?" Daniel took a deep breath. "Grandma is very sick, yes. She has cancer, a type called pancreatic cancer. Like Mom had breast cancer." Mia's voice was small but steady. "Similar, yes, though it's a different type. Grandma's doctors are giving her treatments to help her feel better and to try to slow down the cancer." Jake's face scrunched in confusion. "But she'll get better, right? Like when I had strep throat and the medicine made it go away." Daniel and I exchanged glances. This was the hardest part. "Cancer is different from strep throat," I explained gently. "Sometimes the treatments work very well, and sometimes they don't. Grandma's type of cancer is very serious, and the doctors aren't sure if they can make it go away completely." "So she is dying," Mia concluded, her posture stiffening. Daniel moved to sit beside his daughter, putting an arm around her shoulders. "The doctors are doing everything they can, but yes, Grandma is very sick, and we need to be prepared that she might not get better." Jake's eyes filled with tears. "But I don't want Grandma to die. She's supposed to come to my school play. She promised." I knelt in front of him, taking his small hands in mine. "I know this is scary and sad. It's okay to feel upset. Grandma loves you both very much. That's why she wanted to make sure you had a stable routine with us while she focuses on her treatments. That's why she gave us away," Mia said, the pieces clicking into place. "Not because she didn't want us anymore." "Exactly," Daniel confirmed. "She never stopped wanting to be with you. She just knew she wouldn't be able to take care of you the way she wanted to while she's sick." Jake looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. "Can we still visit her, even if she's sick?" "Absolutely," I assured him. "In fact, I think that would make her very happy. We just need to keep the visits shorter so she doesn't get too tired, and understand that she might look different or feel too sick for visitors some days." We spent the next half hour answering their questions as honestly as we could, without overwhelming them with medical details they weren't ready to process. Mia, ever practical, even in her distress, wanted to know the timeline. How long until Grandma might be gone? Jake was more concerned with immediate matters. Could he bring his art projects to show her? Would she still be able to bake cookies with him? By the time we finished talking, we had decided to keep the children home from school for the day, giving them space to process this difficult news. Daniel called into work explaining the family emergency while I prepared comfort food for breakfast. Pancakes shaped like animals, a skill I'd finally mastered after years of trying. As I flipped a slightly lopsided elephant pancake onto Jake's plate, he looked up at me with serious eyes. "You make good pancakes now," he said. "Almost as good as Grandma's." Coming from Jake, this was high praise indeed. "Thank you. I've had a lot of practice. When Grandma dies, will you make her special Christmas cookies too? The ones with the jam in the middle?" The question caught me off guard, but I recovered quickly. "If you want me to, yes, or we could make them together and remember Grandma when we do." He nodded, satisfied with this answer. "I think she'd like that." Later that afternoon, while the children were occupied with a movie, Daniel pulled me aside. "I need to go back to the office for a few hours. There's a client crisis I can't handle remotely. Will you be okay with the kids?" Of course, I assured him. But Daniel, you need to process this too. Don't just bury yourself in work. He gave me a sad smile. One crisis at a time, okay, I promise, we'll talk more tonight. After he left, I made a decision. Despite Evelyn's wishes to keep the children at a distance during her illness, I believed they needed to see her, and she needed to see them. Not a surprise visit this time, but a planned, prepared encounter that would give everyone the chance to connect meaningfully. I called Evelyn's home health aide first, explaining my idea and asking about the best time for a brief visit. Then I gathered the children, explaining my plan. I thought we could bring dinner to Grandma tonight. Something easy for her to eat and maybe some pictures you've drawn or stories you'd like to share. Mia looked skeptical. Dad said Grandma might be too tired for visitors. I already checked with her nurse, I explained. We'll keep it short, and if Grandma seems tired, we'll leave right away. But I think seeing you both might make her feel better. Jake was already running for his art supplies. I'm going to draw her a get well card with all her favorite things. While the children prepared their offerings, I made a simple but nourishing soup, chicken vegetables and rice in a clear broth that would be gentle on Evelyn's stomach. I also packed some photo albums I'd found in the attic filled with pictures of the children's early years with both Laura and Evelyn. When we arrived at Evelyn's house that evening, Denise met us at the door with a grateful smile. She's having a good day today. This will mean so much to her. Evelyn was seated in her favorite armchair, wearing a different headscarf than the day before, with a light application of makeup that couldn't quite disguise her pallor, but showed she had made an effort for the visit. Her face lit up when the children entered, though I could see how she braced herself for their reaction to her changed appearance. "My darlings," she said, opening her arms. "What a wonderful surprise." The children approached cautiously at first, but when Evelyn smiled her familiar smile, Jake rushed forward for a hug. Mia followed more slowly, but the stiffness in her shoulders gradually relaxed as Evelyn asked about school and friends as she always had. I hung back, letting them have this moment together. The soup went into the kitchen with Denise, and I arranged the photo albums on the side table for later. Despite our difficult history, seeing Evelyn's joy at being with her grandchildren touched something in me. Perhaps it was recognition of our shared love for these children, or simply human empathy for someone facing their own mortality. After the initial excitement settled, Jake proudly presented his artwork, a colorful drawing of Evelyn surrounded by all her favorite things, her garden, her antique teacups, her beloved grandchildren. "This is beautiful," she told him, tracing the crayon outlines with a finger that seemed too thin, too fragile. "I'm going to have Denise hang it right here where I can see it every day." Mia had brought a different offering, a notebook filled with questions. "Dad said you might not be here much longer," she said bluntly in the direct way of pre-teens. "I want to know things before you can't tell me anymore." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "That's very wise, Mia. What would you like to know?" "About Mom, about when Dad was little, about our family history, things I might forget or never learn if—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "I'd be honored to answer your questions," Evelyn replied. "Perhaps not all today as I tire easily, but we could make this a project together, a bit each visit." While they began their interview, Jake curled up next to his grandmother, showing her his latest library books. I slipped into the kitchen to heat the soup, giving the family their private time together. Denise joined me, helping to find bowls and spoons. "This is the most animated I've seen her in weeks," she commented. "The children are good medicine." "I hope it's not too tiring for her," I worried aloud. "Some kinds of tired are worth it," Denise replied wisely. "She needs this connection as much as they do." When I returned with a tray of soup, Evelyn looked up with an expression I'd never seen directed at me before: gratitude. "Berta, would you mind helping me with something?" she asked. "My medication is in my purse, and it's time for the evening dose." I set down the tray and picked up the expensive leather handbag from beside her chair. "What am I looking for?" "A small white pill bottle labeled pantoprazole. It should be in the inner pocket." As I searched through the surprisingly heavy purse, my fingers brushed against something that felt like an envelope. Glancing down, I saw a sealed letter addressed to Daniel with the words, "In the event of my death," written in Evelyn's elegant script across the front. My heart raced. This was clearly private, not meant for my eyes. Yet something about it, perhaps the timing of finding it now after everything we'd learned, made it feel significant. "Here's the medication," I said, handing her the pill bottle, while discreetly slipping the envelope into my pocket. I would decide what to do with it later. We stayed for another hour sharing soup and stories, looking through the photo albums I'd brought. Evelyn pointed out details and pictures of the children's early years that only she would know. The story behind Mia's second birthday dress, handmade by Laura. The reason Jake was crying in his preschool photo, a lost toy dinosaur recovered minutes after the picture was taken. When Evelyn began to visibly tire, I gathered the children to leave, promising to return soon. As I helped her back to her bedroom, she surprised me by grasping my hand. "Thank you," she said simply, "for bringing them, for everything." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. In that moment, the years of tension between us seemed less important than the shared love for the children we were trying to protect. Back in the car with the children settled in the back seat, I felt the weight of the letter in my pocket. Whatever it contained, I knew it might change everything. Our understanding of Evelyn's decisions, perhaps even our family's future. The question was whether I had the right to read it before Daniel did. As I drove home through the darkening streets, I made my decision. Some truths couldn't wait for the right moment. Some answers were too important to delay. When the children were asleep, I would read Evelyn's letter, not out of spite or curiosity, but because our family needed clarity now more than ever. The children went to bed surprisingly easily that night, emotionally drained from the day's events. I tucked Jake in with an extra hug, smoothed Mia's hair back from her forehead, in a gesture she usually rejected as too babyish, but tonight accepted with closed eyes. "You did a good thing today," Mia said quietly as I turned off her light. "Taking us to see Grandma." "It was important for all of you," I replied. "Sleep well, sweetheart." Back downstairs, I made myself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table, Evelyn's letter placed carefully in front of me. Daniel had texted that his meeting was running late, a convenient excuse I suspected to avoid more emotional conversations at home. The envelope felt heavy in my hands, weighted with unknown revelations. Taking a deep breath, I carefully opened it, trying to disturb the seal as little as possible. Inside was a single sheet of Evelyn's personalized stationery, covered front and back with her distinctive handwriting. "My dearest Daniel," it began. "If you're reading this, I have either passed away or am no longer able to communicate my wishes clearly. There are things you need to know that I've been too proud or too afraid to say in person. First, my diagnosis came 6 months ago, not 3, as I've told you. I've been fighting this battle alone for longer than anyone realizes, determined not to burden you or disrupt the children's lives until absolutely necessary. The recent decision to give Berta full custody of the children was not made lightly or suddenly. You should know that I've changed my will. The house and all my assets will pass directly to you and the children, with specific trusts established for Mia and Jake's education. The details are with my attorney, Malcolm Pierce. But more important than these practical matters is what I need to confess about Berta. From the moment you married her, I have tested and challenged her in ways that were unfair and at times unkind. I convinced myself I was protecting the children and Laura's memory, but in truth, I was protecting myself from being replaced in your lives. The custody arrangement was my final test, to see if she truly loved the children enough to take on full responsibility for them, even without knowing why I was stepping back. I needed to know they would be cared for properly when I'm gone. What I've witnessed these past months has humbled me. Berta has risen to every challenge with grace and determination. She has put the children's needs above her own maintained routines, and even tried to preserve their relationship with me despite my distance. She has proven herself to be exactly what you and the children need, a loving, committed mother who chooses this family every day. I was wrong about her, Daniel. My initial dislike was based on fear. Fear of being displaced, fear of Laura being forgotten, fear of losing my connection to you and the children. Please tell her I am sorry for the ways I've hurt and undermined her over the years. My only consolation is knowing I leave you and the children in capable, loving hands. All my love, Mother. I read the letter twice, then a third time, tears blurring the words. The revelation that Evelyn had been sick for 6 months, suffering alone, while maintaining her usual activities, was shocking enough, but her admission about testing me about her deliberate undermining and finally her approval, these struck deeper chords. For 7 years, I had tried to earn Evelyn's respect, to prove myself worthy of her son and grandchildren. I had interpreted her sudden delegation of custody as another manipulation, never imagining it was actually her final desperate attempt to ensure her family would be cared for after she was gone. The sound of Daniel's key in the front door startled me. I quickly folded the letter and returned it to its envelope, unsure whether to admit I'd read it or simply return it to Evelyn's purse on our next visit. Daniel entered the kitchen looking exhausted, his tie loosened and jacket slung over his shoulder. He stopped short when he saw my tear-stained face. "What's wrong? Are the kids okay?" "The kids are fine," I assured him. "They're asleep. But there's something you need to see." I held out the envelope. "I found this in your mother's purse when I was getting her medication. It's addressed to you." He took it, frowning at the ominous words written across the front. "You opened it?" "Yes," I admitted. "I know I shouldn't have, but after everything that's been hidden recently, I felt we needed to know what's in it." Daniel sank into a chair, staring at the envelope without opening it. "What does it say?" "It's better if you read it yourself." He nodded and carefully extracted the letter, his eyes moving across his mother's handwriting. I watched his expression change: surprise, then pain, then a kind of resigned understanding. When he finished, he placed the letter on the table between us. "6 months," he said quietly. "She's been sick for 6 months and told no one." "That's your mother," I replied, proud to the end. "And she tested you. Used the children to test you." His voice held a note of anger now, "without telling me that was her intention." "I'm not surprised," I said honestly. "She's never trusted me with them. Not really." Daniel reached across the table and took my hand. "But she does now. That's what matters. She sees what I've always seen, that you love Mia and Jake as your own." "I do," I confirmed, fresh tears threatening. "I always have." "I'm sorry," he said, his own eyes glistening, "for not telling you about Mom's cancer, for not standing up to her years ago when she first started criticizing you, for letting you think even for a moment that I doubted your commitment to our family." I squeezed his hand. "We've all made mistakes. Even Evelyn admits that in her letter." We sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the implications of everything we'd learned. "What do we do now?" Daniel finally asked. "We face this together," I replied simply. "All of us. No more secrets, no more tests. Your mother deserves to spend her remaining time surrounded by family who knows the truth and loves her anyway." Daniel nodded slowly. "She's not going to like that we read her letter." "Probably not," I agreed with a small smile. "But I think it's time for some honesty between all of us. Don't you?" The next morning, we called Evelyn's home and arranged to visit. Just the two of us while the children were at school. Daniel carried the letter in his pocket, determined to confront his mother about her deception, however well-intentioned. Evelyn was sitting in her sunroom again, looking more tired than she had the previous evening. Her eyes widened slightly at the sight of both of us, clearly understanding this wasn't a casual visit. "You found my letter," she said immediately, her gaze falling to Daniel's pocket, where the edge of the envelope was visible. "Yes," he confirmed. "Berta discovered it yesterday." Evelyn's eyes flicked to me, but without the usual judgment. "And you read it." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes. I'm sorry for the invasion of privacy, but after being kept in the dark about your illness, I felt we needed to know." She nodded slowly. "I suppose I can't fault you for wanting the truth when I've been so determined to hide it." Daniel pulled up a chair directly in front of his mother. 6 months, Mom. You've been fighting this alone for 6 months. Why?" "Because that's what I do, Daniel," she replied with a touch of her old spirit. "I handle things. I don't burden others with my problems." "We're not others," he said, voice breaking slightly. "We're your family." "And you had already been through so much with Laura," she countered. "I couldn't bear to put you and the children through another prolonged illness, another loss. So you thought disappearing from our lives without explanation would be better." The hurt in Daniel's voice was palpable. Evelyn had the grace to look ashamed. I thought I could manage it privately." that perhaps the treatments would work and you'd never need to know how serious it was. By the time I realized that wouldn't be the case, things had progressed significantly. I leaned forward, entering the conversation. And the custody arrangement, was that really a test? Her eyes met mine directly. Partially. I needed to know the children would be cared for properly when I'm gone, but it was also practical. I simply couldn't maintain my previous level of involvement while undergoing treatment. You could have told us the truth, I said, given us the chance to support you to prepare the children gradually. Perhaps, she acknowledged, but I've never been good at accepting help. A failing, I realize now. Daniel took his mother's thin hand in his. No more secrets, Mom. No more facing things alone. Whatever time you have left, we want to spend it together. As a family. Tears filled Evelyn's eyes. The children know. Yes, I confirmed. We told them yesterday morning. They're scared and sad, but they're also resilient. They want to be with you to make memories while they can. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. I suppose that's all any of us can do now. Make the most of the time we have left. There's one more thing, Daniel said, his voice steadying. We'd like you to consider moving in with us. The guest room is on the main floor, so no stairs to manage. You could have your privacy, but also be surrounded by family. Evelyn looked genuinely startled by the suggestion. Move in with you. But surely Berta doesn't want... It was my idea, I interrupted. The children would love having you there. And frankly, it would be easier for all of us than trying to coordinate visits and care from a distance. She studied my face, perhaps looking for signs of reluctance or resentment. Finding none, she asked quietly, after everything I've put you through over the years, you would open your home to me. Your family, I said simply. Whatever has passed between us that hasn't changed. For perhaps the first time in our relationship, Evelyn looked at me with genuine respect. Thank you, she whispered. I don't deserve such kindness, but I am grateful for it. As we worked out the logistics of moving Evelyn into our home, arranging for her medical equipment, and home health aid to transfer as well, I felt a strange sense of peace settling over me. The road ahead would not be easy. Watching Evelyn decline, helping the children process another loss, supporting Daniel through his grief. But at least we would face it together with honesty and open hearts. On the drive home, Daniel reached for my hand across the console. Thank you, he said, for suggesting Mom move in, for forgiving her, for loving our family enough to do this. I squeezed his hand. It's what families do, the real ones anyway. As we pulled into our driveway, I thought about the letter hidden in Evelyn's purse and the unexpected gift it had given us. Not just the truth about her illness, but the chance to heal wounds that had festered for years. Sometimes the most difficult circumstances bring unexpected blessings, forcing us to confront what truly matters before it's too late. 2 months later, our house had transformed to accommodate its newest resident. The guest room became Evelyn's sanctuary, filled with her favorite photos books and the small treasures she couldn't bear to leave behind. A hospital bed replaced the queen-size guest bed with medical equipment discreetly arranged for easy access. Denise came daily to assist with medical needs, but the family care, the emotional support, the companionship, the day-to-day integration into our lives, that fell to us. The adjustment wasn't always smooth. Evelyn, accustomed to being the authority in her own home, struggled with her new dependence. I found my patience tested when she critiqued my cooking or housekeeping old habits, dying hard even as her body weakened. Daniel oscillated between devoted son and overwhelmed caregiver, sometimes snapping at minor inconveniences before apologizing profusely. But there were beautiful moments too, moments that made the challenges worthwhile. Jake reading his school books aloud to his grandmother when her eyes were too tired to focus on the page. Mia carefully applying nail polish to Evelyn's thin fingers, maintaining her grandmother's dignity when so much else was being lost. Daniel sitting beside his mother's bed late at night, holding her hand while she slept, storing up these quiet moments of connection. And surprisingly, there were moments between Evelyn and me that I would never have anticipated. Late-night conversations when pain kept her awake, and I took the overnight shift. Her teaching me to make her famous Christmas cookies, dictating instructions from her bed while I mixed dough in a bowl on her lap. The day she asked me to help sort through her jewelry, designating specific pieces for Mia for Jake's future wife, and, to my astonishment, for me. "This was my mother's," she said, pressing a delicate pearl brooch into my palm. "I want you to have it." "Evelyn, I couldn't—" "Please," she interrupted. "You've earned it. More than earned it." As November turned to December, Evelyn's decline accelerated. The pain increased despite stronger medications. Her appetite vanished entirely. The vibrant, formidable woman who had intimidated me for years gradually disappeared, replaced by someone fragile and vulnerable, who needed our constant care. One particularly difficult evening after the children were in bed, I sat beside Evelyn while Daniel spoke with her doctor in the hallway. Her breathing was labored, her eyes closed, but her hand reached for mine with surprising strength. "Berta," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm here," I assured her, leaning closer. "The children," she began, then paused to gather strength. "You'll keep Laura's memory alive for them." The request stunned me. For years, Evelyn had positioned herself as the keeper of Laura's memory, subtly implying that I might try to erase their mother from their lives. "Of course I will," I promised. "They'll always know how much she loved them, how special she was." Evelyn's eyes opened, finding mine with unexpected clarity. "And they'll know how much I loved them too. Every day," I vowed. "I'll make sure they never forget. I was wrong about you," she admitted, each word clearly costing her effort. "So wrong. You were exactly what they needed, what Daniel needed." Tears filled my eyes. "Thank you for saying that." "Had to say it." "While I still could." Her eyes drifted closed again. "No regrets." At the end, Daniel returned, taking the seat opposite me, Evelyn's bed between us. We formed a triangle, husband, wife, mother, connected by hands and shared love for the sleeping children upstairs. In that moment, the years of tension and mistrust seemed to dissolve, leaving only the essential truth: we were family, in all the complex, imperfect ways that mattered. 3 days later, on a clear December morning with snow falling gently outside her window, Evelyn slipped away peacefully. Daniel was reading to her from her favorite poetry book. Mia and Jake had just left for school after saying their morning goodbyes, not knowing it would be the last time. I was arranging fresh flowers on her bedside table when Daniel suddenly stopped reading, his gaze fixed on his mother's face. "Mom," he said softly, then more urgently, "Mom." I moved to the bed, checking for the pulse that was no longer there, the breath that had ceased. "She's gone," I whispered, placing my hand on Daniel's shoulder. He nodded, tears streaming down his face, unable to speak. I stepped out to call Denise to begin the practical arrangements that follow, death giving him a private moment to say goodbye to his mother. The days that followed passed in a blur of funeral preparations, condolence calls, and supporting the children through their grief. Mia withdrew into herself, spending hours organizing the interview notes she'd taken during her conversations with Evelyn. Jake alternated between tearful outbursts and almost manic energy, confused by the complex emotions of loss. The funeral itself was dignified and well attended, a testament to Evelyn's standing in the community. Daniel delivered a moving eulogy about his mother's strength, her dedication to family, her unwavering principles. I sat in the front row with the children, Mia rigid with controlled grief beside me, Jake sniffling quietly, his small hand clutched in mine. What surprised me most was how deeply I felt Evelyn's absence. Despite our difficult history, she had become an integral part of our daily lives during those final months. The house seemed emptier without her, quieter, in a way that ached. 6 months after Evelyn's passing, we had settled into a new normal. The guest room had been converted back, though we kept a few of Evelyn's items as touchstones of memory. The children had returned to their activities and friendships, their grief surfacing in waves rather than the constant presence of those early weeks. One afternoon, I was helping Mia prepare for a mother-daughter event at her school, something she had previously attended with Evelyn. "Do you think I look okay?" she asked, uncharacteristically concerned about her appearance. "Grandma always helped me pick out clothes for these things." "You look beautiful," I assured her. "Your grandmother would be proud." Mia studied her reflection, adjusting her headband. "You know, she told me something near the end." when you were making dinner one night. What did she tell you? I asked, curious. She said that even though she didn't always show it, she was glad my dad married you, that you were good for us. Mia turned to face me directly. She made me promise to give you a chance to be my mom, not to